What is up, guys? Quincy Carrier here, and I just came home from a long drive from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, all the way to Cleveland, Ohio, and I am here to tell you what I saw. The Pittsburgh Steelers Family Day. And the first thing I'm going to say is that the Steelers are still the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that they are just a very, very solid team all around. They might not necessarily have a singular position group that is elite, like the Browns have at wide receiver or the Baltimore Ravens have in their secondary, but they are just so well-rounded, so very, very good at almost every position that it kind of drives you nuts. Like, let me just go through their offense real quick. On offense, they have a solid offensive line. They have a couple position battles, but it looks very solid. At wide receiver, they have a solid group that is better than most. At running back, they have a very solid rotation that is better than a lot of teams. Not the best, not the most flashy, but very, very good, very well-rounded. And that is going to be the theme of the day with the Pittsburgh Steelers. With that being said, with this team being so extremely solid and well-rounded, how do they fare in the AFC North? Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of break down in depth what I saw, and we're going to start with the offensive side of the ball. Now, the first thing that popped out to anybody who went to this thing, is that Juju Smith-Schuster should not be slept on. I know there is a lot of criticism about, he had Antonio Brown next to him. Hell, I was given that same criticism not too long ago. I believe that Antonio Brown was a huge part to what Juju Smith-Schuster accomplished last year, but I don't think I was 100% right on that. I might have to back that one up because he looked really good. Ate up anybody he was up against on one-on-ones. In the team drills that he was in, he wasn't in a lot of them. He looked very good. Juju Smith-Schuster looks like a number one wide receiver. He looks like a star wide receiver in this league. So I would not sleep on Juju Smith-Schuster if I were you, and I would definitely draft him if I were a fantasy owner. And outside of Juju, they have a lot of solid wide receivers. Ryan Switzer looked very solid and reliable. Deontay Johnson, the rookie out of Toledo, looks solid, looked good, just needs to add weight, and then he will become a problem in NFL. James Washington looked very improved. And I think the one group that comes the closest to elite on this team is the running back rotation, because I think James Conner and Benny Snell are going to be a nasty tandem in the backfield. Benny Snell is very elusive, very explosive, and pretty quick. He can hit the edges and bounce runs outside pretty easily. And James Conner is just that bruising. It's that classic 1-2 back tandem. Very, very good. And Benny Snell is very good as a receiver out the backfield too. So that tandem looks to do damage. That is probably their best group of positions, I would say, is running back. Now, one of the things that did become clear to me while I was here, and granted, Donte Moncrief didn't practice, but no clear number 2 yet for Pittsburgh. A lot of solid guys in that rotation. Nobody really stepping up and being that clear number 2 wide receiver yet. James Washington has his moments. He also has his moments where he's inconsistent. Eli Rogers sometimes looks like he is a guy who could be a number 2 wide receiver, but then he just drops way too many balls. Donte Moncrief physically looks like a number 2 wide receiver, but Donte Moncrief's MO his whole career so far has been a guy who looks good in practice but plays like garbage, and I don't know until games start if that's going to be the case for Donte Moncrief. And then again, Deontay Johnson, the rookie, who is probably going to be the number 2 wide receiver for this team or play a lot of snaps at the number 2 spot here. He's very good, runs really good routes, but he's just not big enough to really do damage at his size like he should be able to in the future. He needs to add some weight. He needs to become stronger. A lot of times you saw corners just decide to get physical with him, and it worked better than I think he would have liked it. So Deontay Johnson has a future, but definitely needs to bulk up a little bit. That's really it on offense. Obviously, we know that Big Ben, he's Big Ben. He's probably going to be Big Ben this year. It's going to be the same stuff. He's going to be pretty damn good. But the offense looks very, very solid. very good, very solid. Not really exciting, not a flashy offense, not a sexy offense like they've had the last 3 years, but very solid, traditional, solid Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The defense is the same exact story, and I actually have a name for you that you might want to write down that might become significant at the end of the year, and that name is Ola Adenehi. I probably mispronounced that. I'm sorry, but by the end of the season, I'll probably know how to pronounce that because he's going to become a guy in this league. Look very good, look very physical, stop the run, and he can rush. He's going to be a guy. He wears James Harrison's number, but I guess he earned it. But he kind of does look like James Harrison out there. Not exactly. He's no James Harrison yet, but he looks like he's going to cause some problem, cause some havoc. He caused havoc all practice. But again, that D-line, they run a 3-4 there. That D-line, just solid. It's nothing sexy. Stuff's been there for years. Hayward, Tuitt, Hargrave, solid. Pass rush, same deal. Bud Dupree, TJ Watt, solid. We go to linebacker. You have a rotation of Vince Williams, Mark Barron, Devin Bush. Very solid. Devin Bush could be a star in this league. And then the secondary, which is probably the biggest concern, still is pretty solid. Because they have Joe Hayden, who at this point is not the elite shutdown corner that he used to be in his days in Cleveland, but very solid. And Steven Nelson, who looked, again, very, very solid. And then in the back of that, they have Sean Davis, again, pretty solid. And then Terrell Edmonds, again, solid. This team's just so solid. You know what I mean? And that is what Pittsburgh is. Even as a Browns fan, I have to admit they are a well-run organization. They kind of remind you of the Spurs because they always make the playoffs. Well, not last year. Woo. But they seem to always be in contention for a playoff spot. And they always just churn out new guys, and they're just very solid year after year, even after they lose big names like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. Now, is this team on paper better than what they could have been last year if Le'Veon Bell would have played and not held out the entire season? No, they're not. But they are just extremely solid. And when you're an extremely solid, well-coached team in the NFL, that can take you a long place. Look at the New York Giants. They've won the Super Bowl twice. Those teams, not really great teams, but very solid, well-coached teams. So even though it seems like the Pittsburgh Steelers are starting to get lost in the shuffle as the Browns and the Ravens compete to get bigger names, the Steelers are standing pat with their young guys, very solid. This is a team that you could easily see if they have some injuries and things don't go their way, go 7-9. But this is a team that I wouldn't be surprised to see is 12-4 or 11-5 and fighting for the top of the division at the end of the season because they are just so well coached and they are solid. So I will say this definitively, I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are dead. I think any call of that is very premature. I think this team is going to be a very, very, at the very least, solid team. Sure, they don't have a single position group where you look at and you go, oh my God, they are loaded there. Wide receiver, they have one very good guy that's proven. Running back, they have one very good guy that's proven. Quarterback, they got Big Ben. So they're elite there. But offensive line, they have some moving parts. They have some competitions, but they're very solid. And I think from the outside looking in, you would think that this team isn't very good because they don't really have any names. They don't really have any buzz attached to them. But when you watch them, they're just so solid through and through. I mean, and it even shows when they get into third team reps that even those guys hold their own a lot better than third team guys have at other camps. They are just so well run that it's hard for me to see that this thing implodes like a lot of people might think it will. This is just a very solid, very boring, unsexy, unflashy team that could win the division. And the AFC North is going to be a very difficult division to win this year. This is why I say just make the playoffs if you're a Browns fan and win a game. We don't know how they're going to be able to get in there because winning this division is going to be tough. It is going to be very, very tough because I think the Ravens, I think the Steelers, I think the Browns are all candidates and all very capable of winning 10 to 12 games each. Obviously, not every one of those teams can win 10 to 12 games. It's not mathematically possible, but they are all capable of doing it. And even Cincinnati, they're a very good last place team. So it is going to be a very hard division to win. If you're a Browns fan, just be happy that 5 of your 6 division games are after your bye week. So your new team is going to have a lot of time to get melded together and get some chemistry. But there are no gaps in this division. Pittsburgh is very solid on both sides of the ball at almost every position group. They may not have the star power that other teams have, but they are extremely solid. The Ravens may not have the best offense in the world, but they'll be able to move the ball. They'll be able to chew clock, and they'll be able to score when they need to. They're not going to put a lot of points up because I don't think they're going to be able to score from the 10-yard line out to the 40. I think they're going to have real trouble in that area because Lamar Jackson is just not that polished of a passer to be able to make damage in that area in the end zone. But they're still going to be a very good team with one of the NFL's best secondaries. The Browns, we've talked about them extensively on this channel. The most talent, they have the most talent on defense. They have the most talent on offense out of all of these teams in the AFC North. Even the Bengals, you have to throw them into the mix. Not to win the division, but they could crash the hopes of some teams because they're not going to go 0-16, I would think. AJ Green is only going to be out for like 2-3 weeks at the beginning of the season. They still have Andy Dalton, who is a very serviceable quarterback. They still have Tyler Boyd. They still have Joe Mixon. They still have a lot of weapons. Geno Atkins. They still have a lot of weapons on that Cincinnati Bengals team that makes you think they're not just going to be a layover win. So this division might be one of the most interesting ones to watch because there are so many good teams. And I am just incredibly interested to see how this shakes out. Now, the one thing I will say with Pittsburgh that would concern me if I were a Steelers fan is that there are certain positions where you can't afford an injury. Wide receiver, while it's solid, if they lose Juju Smith-Schuster, all hell is going to break loose in that rotation. They need a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster. He cannot get injured for that team. They're going to need him because if he goes down, all hell's going to break loose. Same thing at quarterback, obviously. Big Ben is Big Ben, Hall of Famer, borderline. But if Big Ben goes down, they got nothing back there. I mean, I watched Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph, and they both just did not look great. It reminded me a lot of watching DeShone Kizer at times. I wouldn't have a lot of hope in either of those two guys in being the future if I was a Steelers fan. And then on secondary, if an injury happens to Joe Hayden or Steven Nelson, they have issues up there because Artie Burns and some of the other guys they have in that secondary just aren't top notch. They may not be able to sustain injuries in certain position groups, but everywhere else they're extremely solid. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the season is to them. So that is what I would say about the Steelers, and that is what I learned from going to the Steelers Stadium practice. And in the comment section down below, a lot of you guys cheer for AFC North teams. If you don't, just imagine you do. What team in the AFC North scares you the most? Is it the Browns with their talent on both sides of the ball? Is it the Ravens with their talent on the defensive end and with the dynamicness, that's not a word, but whatever, of Lamar Jackson? Is it the Steelers with their overall just solidness? Or is it the Bengals with how much they have been slept on this offseason? Let me know in the comment section down below. But if you like this video, if you want to see more, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload, and I upload a lot during this time of the year. And if you have a buck or two to spare and want to play fantasy football with me, please consider joining the Patreon so you can play fantasy football with me and get bragging rights over me when you inevitably beat me, because I am terrible and I'm probably going to forget to set my rosters. I'm that dude. No, I'm going to actually set my rosters. I hope. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.